Well, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Common Cause. We do have quite a few things to talk about today, as Catherine mentioned, redistricting, redistricting, an update on some voting and elections things, First Amendment things, the People's Promise. Um, we'll talk about a bill that where there's going to be a rally against this weekend. Um, and then uh, some other events that are coming up. So I'm starting out with redistricting. So I'll just go ahead. Um, Raise your hand if you were there. It was so much fun. We we circled the whole state house. We had about 500 people, and they stood in a big circle around the state house, and they said fair maps now and do your job and all those things that those uh, legislators need to know. Um, Follow the Constitution. We got together on Constitution Day, so that was an appropriate day to be coming together. Um, why are we doing this again? Well, unfortunately, we need to draw our congressional map again, or fortunately or unfortunately. Um, by the way, we just had such a wonderful mixture of people at Fair Maps Day. We had union folks, we had clergy, we had people from the ACLU. You see, you may see yourselves in that picture. I see someone who's on this call. It's in the picture there. But very exciting. And it was a lot of fun. It was great to be together because we know we're right and we know what's right and we know what's in the Ohio Constitution. Unfortunately, the people that are going to be drawing the maps are not so clear about how this is all supposed to work. Um, the first deadline in our redistricting is coming up next Tuesday, September 30th, and yet we still don't have a map that has been put forward by the Republicans on the Joint Committee for Congressional Redistricting or the Republican caucus, or a map that comes out of the committee as a joint map. So it's looking like they are not going to meet that deadline and they're going to move on to the second stage. But it is legitimate for us to ask, where's the map? And so, that is something we need to do. They had a hearing Monday this week. These are all the people who are on the committee. There's 12 members of the committee. And 168 people either submitted testimony or came to testify in person. And if you were one of those, um, much appreciation, really, really wonderful how many people came out. There was great, powerful, compelling testimony. Um, Pretty much, you know, they know they're wrong. They know they're not following the Constitution. They hear you speak and they think, well, what can I say that is against this? And they trot out the fake definition of gerrymandering that Teresa Gavarone is in love with, that has to do with basically drawing a line anywhere. And so it definitely feels like we're pushing a rock up a hill. No, no other sweeter way to say that. We are pushing a rock up a hill, but the more we talk about it, the more we talk about the rules in the Constitution, their obligation to follow the Constitution, the more the people of Ohio come to understand that these politicians are in it for themselves and not for us. And the greater the possibility of change in the future. So what we're asking, oh, got a new slide here. Stewart criticized the Dems map for not having public input, but all the testimony was about the Democrats' map or maps that had been submitted. The Republicans haven't actually submitted anything, so we weren't able to comment on those maps. It was quite difficult to comment on the maps because they weren't there to look at, etc. So um, uh, people did a really good job given the difficult circumstances.
And Mia, I included that picture
Yes.
of looking at these screens where you literally couldn't see anything. So they'd be talking about, some district lines and they'd be, getting really specific about Delaware County. And then we're all like, well, wait a second, we can't actually see the maps. And we had these screens right in front, like where they literally could have put them up and we could have actually had a much more participatory hearing. So it was just generally frustrating. And that's why I thought this slide made sense to also include that you can actually find information on Dave's redistricting app. And these are, essentially, big picture, but you can actually go in, you can look in your own neighborhood. You can change the district lines so that you can look at you can look at where they are and get a general sense. And you can also look at like, well, how does it break down? Does this district favor Democrats? Does it favor Republicans? Is it more competitive? And they do this by using colors, and the darker the color, the more partisan it is, and so you can get a sense of what the districts are actually like. And so Mia, on the next slide, this is the other thing. Andrew Green, who is the Ohio politics guru, put together a spreadsheet. And Kelly, if you'll reshare the doc, that the link to all of the different resources, and we'll send like a follow-up. So you'll know we send a follow-up that has the slides and the recording. But we'll also, share some different resources so that you have those as well. Andrew put this together, and you were able to, I look at this and I get really overwhelmed. But if you actually want to look at the maps, and you go to Q, so it's column Q, and you can find the links to each of the maps and you can look at them a little more deeply. And I actually found that really helpful. So you can look, for example, at the Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission. This was something that was created during 2021, where it was essentially what they call a model commission, where they took input and went into different communities and put together what they called a unity map. And so that has been submitted. Deidre Reese, um, from Equal Districts, or the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, submitted that. So that's one that's worth looking at. And also, I'm very interested in the maps that, um, shall we say, heavily favor Republicans. So you don't have to be a mapping expert to get in, click on the link, look at the districts. It's actually very interesting. The other thing is, you do not actually have to sign up. You can actually dismiss it. You have to accept the rules, but you don't when you get to Dave's redistricting app, but you do not have to actually, join the project. You can actually just dismiss that. Anything you wanted to
Yes.
add, Mia?
Um, yeah. So I think the point is that there is a way of doing this that could have meaningful public participation. Um, the first step in that, of course, would be the committee itself having a map to discuss, which they didn't have. So there's, no end of ways to make this a more meaningful process, but not having a map to discuss and having these citizen maps and the Democrats map, which we kind of know to start with are not going to be the ones that are proposed and adopted by the committee. That is the most sure way to make sure this is not a meaningful process. And so that's where the frustration lies, particularly when the majority on the committee complain that the Democrats submitted their map late. Well, late is better than never. Um, so that is the push that we are doing right now, is literally to call Representative Brian Stewart, Senator Teresa Gavarone, and just say, where's the map? The deadline is Tuesday. They've made absolutely no first steps or motion towards producing a map. Um, this is a link, and I don't know, it is on the main doc there with all the links, but if Kelly, if you would be willing to pop it in the chat as well, just that link. Uh, You don't need to have a whole long disquisition. You can literally just say, where's the map? We're waiting for a map. The deadline is Tuesday. When you log your call, if you hit this link, it basically just gives you the phone number. You're making the phone number. But then if you click log your call, you can just say, yes, I made the call. And it'll actually give you a list of the remaining Republican members of the committee if you want to call more than two. Those will also be there. So thank you so much for doing that. It would be awesome for their phones to be ringing off the hook today. You can also call after hours if you don't want to speak to someone and you just want to leave a message. That's also fine. Um, you can call today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and the deadline is Tuesday. So we're hoping their phones are ringing that whole time. Kelly.
Oh, Mia, before you moved
Yes.
on,
Yes.
I did get a question
Mm-hmm.
about
Just trying to move
redistricting,
back. Yeah.
and it had to do with, okay, so we have a deadline in September, and we have a deadline in October, and we have a deadline in November. Why? Like, which I think is a reasonable, like, usually when there's a deadline, there's a deadline. And so,
So
yes.
So basically, when the law was changed, when the ballot initiative, when the um, when the Constitution was changed and there was a reform, the reform measure adopted these three silos, and essentially it was like you can have a first try and you can try to do it in the General Assembly, and if that doesn't work, and there are certain rules that apply, you have to have a certain percentage of the major party and a certain percentage of the minor party, and that's the best shot. But if that doesn't work, we'll give you another method to try. We'll send you to a commission and we'll see if the commission can do it in a bipartisan way. And if that doesn't work, then we'll send you back to the General Assembly with slightly different rules, a slightly different timeline, etc. And so it was just the mechanism that was written into the law when the redistricting reform measure was adopted and put in the Constitution. Uh, Jonathan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Wondering if you would be okay with us posting the blog your call link on social media.
Absolutely, please do. We would love it. Do it twice.
Please spread the word. Thank you.
Yes. Okie dokie. So I am gonna move on and move on to voting and elections.
Morning, everyone. Sandwiched in between Fair Maps Day and the redistricting hearing was our Election Protection Summit last Saturday. And we had a great turnout. We had about 70 people from a dozen or so counties representing Ohio as we came together in the community in spirit of election protection, and where we all gathered to hear from election experts. We had a couple different breakout sessions with college voting and peacekeepers and how to be a poll monitor. And so it was a great time. I think there's more photos. Next slide. Oh, I think we can go to the next one.
And
Coming this,
Jackie has her hand up.
oh, who has
No,
hand?
I think I just said raise your hand if you see yourself in the picture.
Oh.
Ah.
Yeah.
We've had so many great pictures over the last week with all of our events. It's we wish we could just have this running slideshow of all the photos. So, the Election Protection Summit really kicked off the Ohio Voter Rights Coalition's efforts to recruit poll monitors, which would be, observers from outside polling locations, and also really as we think more about how we can help support elections. We all know, and many on this call are probably have already experienced poll working in the past, but we do consider that as a great way to get in there and help voters. We recognize that day is very long. There's a decent amount of training that goes with it. So if that's not something you're able to do, we do ask if you consider being a poll monitor, which would be helping our nonpartisan effort outside the polls, where we are really the eyes and the ears, of what's happening in any given location, so we can help support voters, report problems, We also have put together, Angela from Ohio Voter Rights Coalition has put together a couple toolkits that we will send off in the follow-up email, and that general election protection information, the 866-R-VOTE hotline. And additionally, this time around, just confidence in elections toolkit. It's just some good solid messaging about our elections and the bipartisanship of our election administration process and all the checks and the balances that go along with traditional election administration that some folks are bringing into question these days. Next slide. We are underway for elections and for the general election, and the voter registration deadline, last day to register to vote, is October 6th. So that's a little bit over a week from now. Come October 7th, we will start early vote. You can see the list of open days, and I think the important thing to mention is for early vote, we do have only one weekend this time around where you can vote on the weekend, and that is November 1st and 2nd. And then, of course, election day will be November 4th. Reminder that there is no early vote the day before election day, but we, encourage you just to share some good information about some of the upcoming deadlines and encourage folks to, make their absentee request, their ballots request early, and work through that process, so we can make sure that everyone's vote counts. Next slide. You may not have to ask why Ohio voters need you more than ever, but we've got a lot going on and a lot of attacks right now with our elections. And so just as a reminder, at the end of 2024, we saw almost 34,000 provisional votes that were cast and not able to be counted. We want to remind folks that, and actually one of our election officials from Licking County, Brian Mead, who's the director at Licking, he really tried to stress to people that one of the biggest things we can do is just check with our friends and our neighbors and our community and just remind everyone to keep their license from expiring, check the expiration date and make sure you take care of that before coming to the polls. That was the #1 reason that they're seeing for rejecting provisionals is ID. And we all know once you go down the provisional, direction, there are a lot of ways on that provisional ballot application where information can be mismarked or missing and your vote won't count. We also had a couple interesting situations in the last month, one being in Seneca County. So there was a group of individual citizens who had come together to actually try and create a ballot initiative at a county level in a couple counties across the state, where they wanted to bring to a vote whether or not that county could actually use voting machines. It turned out after some back and forth that Secretary LaRose said this is not a petitionable event, but nonetheless, there are groups out there that are just advocating for no machines. And so deletevotingmachines.org is their website, in fact. And so it came to a point where Seneca County, deciding on who can be a poll worker, sat down and deliberated back and forth and made a decision last month to say, okay, as a compromise, anybody who outwardly, publicly, condones no voting machines, right? And that brings into question any system that we're currently functioning under really shouldn't be able to run a voting location. So we're going to say that those folks can't be voting location managers, who are the people in charge of a polling location. There has been a lot of back and forth there. The GOP candidate has come out for governor, has come out and said, actually, Vivek Ramaswamy showed up at the Seneca County meeting this week, protesting about First Amendment rights and that you can't disparage a whole group of people who want to be poll workers. And so Seneca County did walk back that, and now apparently anyone, so including people who do not believe voting machines should be used in our elections, can run polling locations. So we are definitely seeing some weird attacks on our election administration. And the more poll workers we have and the more poll monitors we have at polling locations, the more information we will have on election day and during early vote to help that along. We also know that there are attacks at the federal level. So recently, over the past month and a half, the Department of Justice has continued to ask states, and not in exactly nice ways, to turn over their voter rolls, and since some sensitive information that comes with that. Now here in Ohio, our voter rolls are posted online, and so there is a snapshot that is available for anybody at any time to review. But there's definitely a little, I'll say, aggression towards towards secretaries of states, and how states are being expected to comply at a federal level, even though the federal government does not normally work with state level election data. And then we also have new incidences of finding, non-citizens on voter rolls, and the potential, what Secretary LaRose is calling election crimes. And so that has been in the news recently, with information coming out that, there needs to be another investigation. And we know that last year there were over 600 that county prosecutors didn't want to prosecute, but then the Secretary of State forced the issue onto the Attorney General, and they're still working on less than, I think, a half dozen of folks that have to go through the court system. So it is a very problematic time, and I'm sure you're all aware, but we really would appreciate your help if you're able to engage with us in the next month or so. We have trainings coming up. We'll have those in the follow-up doc, and we'll share more information. And I see the chat is going.
I
Can't see if there's a question or not.
Well, Bill was asking about if the voter rolls that are released, if there's been a change to include social security numbers and phone numbers. And I'll say no, they did used to have phone numbers, but they believe they took that away, but they have not added social security numbers. So it's
Yeah, and I don't, if there's the one link we'll send to you, and I can do it in 1 second, with the DOJ request. This article actually has the official letters that came from the Department of Justice to the Secretaries of State outlining the information. And so they were looking for last 4 digits of socials, and birth dates. So, but the whole, both letters and both requests are in there. So the Secretary of State's office did comment. They did have a spokesperson comment and say, we recognize, we're working with the federal government, but at the same time, we recognize that, there is sensitive data, and that Ohio regulates that. So if
it
you
has
want to
been
call that. Go ahead.
been really interesting. All the different states in Common Cause were chatting about this, and some of the states, like Ohio, were like, absolutely, you're free to take the data anytime, we have it available. And other states were, absolutely no way, you can't have this data. And so there was just interesting, like the different reactions, and also the different each state's laws are very different, and their systems for storing and sharing data are very different. And so, yeah, it's been interesting. And I just want to, like Wenda's comment about, how do you keep these folks happy who don't believe in the machines? And, yes, it is complicated. And, when you do want to be able to trust the machine. But I think the thing with Seneca County, it's kind of like saying that, somebody who doesn't believe in, antibiotics or modern medicine should be, the head of a hospital or something. It's like this is not, we are not at the point where, with millions of voters in Ohio, that, we could plausibly run an election with absolutely no machines, with just paper counting all the different things and all the different elections and different precincts. And so it's an odd decision on that level.
And a lot, I think a lot of people have questions. So there is so much misinformation swirling, especially from what used to be traditional sources of of government information. And so there is a lot of scrutiny and, increased scrutiny. And so the map on this slide I just wanted to show is actually the different types of voting machines used in different counties. And so Ohio is very variable in terms of, how counties are administering their elections. But we are working with a partner called Verified Voting, and they also in the follow-up resources have a great verifier where you can go on, you can click on your county and you can learn about your voting information, and it's a really helpful resource.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, what's next?
Oh, there was a comment that I thought was important about, making sure that people knew that the people that are overseas actually have slightly different deadlines, and making sure that family members that are here know that. The other thing, I don't know if I missed this, Kelly, where exactly is Seneca County? I know it's in the
So Seneca is
northwest.
like south of Toledo, a little like southeast of
Okay.
Toledo.
I love maps, but that was one I wasn't sure about. Tiffin, right? Is that right?
Yes, I don't know if,
Okay.
yes, I'm not sure if Tiffin is in it. I'm not familiar with all of the city boundaries of within the county, but yeah, up in that neck of the woods.
And then Bill had a comment here too.
Yeah, little more info on what training is mandatory for BOE officials. Um, that is another issue. Of course, it's what's going on is the incredible turnover in folks who are, I mean, yes, they do need good training, but it also helps if you have the years and years of experience. Um, and so that is, we're losing a lot of that kind of brain trust of people who've been working at BOEs for a long time.
And there is mandatory information that poll workers, precinct election officials need to know. And there is a state level manual, but every county conducts their training a little differently. There are even some counties that don't even require folks to go through it every election. And so if they've worked in a previous election, they don't always require you to go back through that. And so there is a little bit of variability in different counties based on their resources and who is conducting those trainings. But in general, every precinct election official across the state, including all poll workers, are supposed to sign an oath, that they agree to carry out a responsible bipartisan, election administration. And so there is an oath that everybody is sworn to complete. But strange times for sure. So thanks, Mia.
Yeah, and David Robertson has some info about in Hamilton County what training folks need to do, etc. Is it okay if we? I do see Mindy your hand, but I also want to move on. What's our?
I think it's, we're at 9, so why don't we have Mindy add her comments, because there's, this is the meat and potatoes of things.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I just wanted to know if your county has normally run well, can you be placed in another county to help in a county that's disruptive or that you think is not doing well?
And the answer to that is no. You have to be from the county to be a poll worker.
For poll workers.
Not only poll worker, but a poll observer.
Oh, observer, yes. You like the poll monitors. Yes,
Correct.
you can go to other counties. In fact,
Yes.
sometimes that's really helpful.
And
Okay, thank you.
yes, when we do have the boards of elections monitor team that is working in multiple counties to go to the boards of elections meetings, so we can keep tabs on what is happening at the local level. And so we have that, and then also, yes, we're trying to figure out how to best use our resources for the upcoming election. But thank you, Mindy, for that comment.
And Kelly, can you put your contact in the
Sure.
comments so we can? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okie dokie. So, Catherine, you are going to tell us about what's going on here.
So, one of the things that I do is I ask folks to make, suggestions for what we should talk about. And this came from John Gray. John is from Claremont County, so right near Toledo. Toledo, good Lord. this tells you what it's like in the morning in my brain. He's from right near Cincinnati. And I'm
Thank
just
you.
there we go. Sorry. Talking about maps, getting me confused. But he's from Claremont County. So John Gray was interested in the fact that, we talked about different changes that are in the state operating budget that was passed in June. But we hadn't talked about this change. And essentially, the state operating budget changed our ability to, if you live in a township, to do direct democracy rules were changed for zoning issues. And you might say, okay, so going from 15% to 35% of the gubernatorial vote. And so, keep in mind, anytime you make it so that it's harder, the signature collection is harder, um, this means that it's harder for citizens to take action on zoning. This was certainly a proposal that was promoted by developers. There were two questions that John had, and John, do you want to jump in here? Didn't mean to put you on the
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So it happened that we in Claremont County, Batavia Township had put together both a referendum and an initiative petition to change the zoning resolution in the township. And our township trustees, I know, had talked with Adam Bird and some of the other representatives. And I suspect there was something to do with this, that conversation having to do with this, as well as the developer. The developer in this case for the referendum was MI Homes, which is owned by the Schottensteins in Columbus. They may have had some input in this also, but we expect we're going to need to go back again. It looks like they're playing some games to, do other zoning things that we would like to get stopped. And this is going to be a big hardship. So we're hoping, I guess I'm interested in knowing your thoughts on what could be done to stop this. It seems like this does not meet the single subject rule. There's certainly no budget component to the number of signatures on a referendum petition. And I think there's also a requirement that they have hearings. As far as I know, there were no hearings on this.
One of the things that's incredibly difficult is to figure out exactly how something got into the budget.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's this vehicle that they use it like everything but the kitchen sink. When it comes to single subject and the budget, it often is untested, meaning, somebody actually has to go and push back on it. But of course, this is not related it's not related in any way to something that has to do with funding. And so when we think about it, so it could be challenged in court. You could go and challenge single subject. The other thing that's interesting is that, Ohio is a home rule state, meaning it's embedded, in the Ohio Constitution that local governments, local folks get to make decisions about their own community. And these kind of rules that cover all of these small towns, it impacts their ability to really truly engage in home rule. It discourages, citizen participation. So I think there are a couple different ways to approach it. I think the challenge is going to be thinking, one, getting appropriate, appropriate resources and attorneys and coming up with a plan for how to address it. I think this is the kind of thing that can make an incredible difference when it comes to people's lives. So sadly, I'm not an attorney, but I know what's in the Ohio Constitution, and we deserve better than having them foster this, not a single subject, not having public hearings, not honoring local governments. This is really the kind of problematic thing that they intentionally stick in the budget because it's hard to tease out and it's hard to push back on. I do know that there are a bunch of different folks across Ohio that are concerned about these kinds of things. I think we, across the state got up in arms about, giving, 600 million to the Haslams for the Cleveland Stadium. But this is another way that the state budget benefited specific corporations. Now, it's also important to remember that the current Ohio Supreme Court is, how can we put this? Very pro corporations. And so, and the Ohio Supreme Court has a history of not honoring home rule. So all we can think, when we think about the fracking that's allowed, there were different areas of the state that attempted to stop fracking. It worked its way all to the way to the Ohio Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that you couldn't essentially zone out fracking, which is incredibly challenging for farmers, for places that are beautiful rural areas, forests, parks, etc. So
It is
that's
amazing how busy they apparently were, um, as the clock got towards midnight on the last day of the negotiations about the budget. It's incredible how many things were kind of stuffed in there under the cover of night, that people, found out about after everything was, the ink was dry and the governor had signed and et cetera. So, um,
Okay. Can I make another comment?
yes, please.
So, I mean, this is one example, but I suspect there, as you mentioned, there are other examples. Are there enough examples that Common Cause or League of Women Voters or something might collect these together and take judicial action against this? And second, let me say one other thing. Our referendum, actually, our developer filed a protest with Board of Elections, bipartisan Board of Elections denied it. They went to the Supreme Court, claiming our referendum was misleading, and the Supreme Court unanimously denied them. And I was a little surprised maybe that they did that.
So, I can't speak for other organizations. I do know that it is costly to the whole, as you're thinking about these court challenges, I think we have, it is the kind of thing where we need to spend some time thinking about it and working through and seeing what the lay of the land is. I think what's important here is trying to figure out what's happening in other townships across the state, because in some way getting more people involved, playing fast and loose with how folks are able to do direct democracy is a real problem. And you'll notice I'm using Jonathan Beard's words there. Sandy Bolzenius was highlighting that they're collecting on home rule. So I just think that, I guess, I'm thinking my first steps would be working and talking with all the different folks that are focusing on local signature collection, direct democracy, folks that are locally worrying about zoning, and there are plenty of them. And so it's a matter of just figuring out what the lay of the land is and, trying to get strategic. And I realize in the short term, that's, incredibly frustrating, but this is the kind of thing that takes time.
Thank you.
all righty. I think Catherine, you're going to tell us about the protest on Tuesday.
So I'm sure that you have heard that Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air for approximately a week, following Brendan Carr, who is the chair of the Federal Communications Commission. He had said that we can do this the hard way or the easy way. And essentially, Kimmel's host, shall we say, Disney, ABC, suspended him indefinitely. And, clearly, when the Federal Communications Commission is going after the free speech rights of prominent individuals. I mean, it's on television, a network that they regulate. This is in fact, this is in fact a major violation of First Amendment rights. And people all over the country stood up and pushed back. And ABC, Disney, and invited Jimmy Kimmel back on the air. I was, I don't know about you, but I wondered if he would how he felt about that, and what it was like to say, okay, yes, I will come back. I felt like one of the things that was really moving when Jimmy came back was his talking about wanting to be very clear that he had in no way intended to make light of murder, that was never his intent. That was never his intent, and he was very clear about that. So this is a protest on the day that Jimmy Kimmel was coming back on the air. So this was at the local ABC station. Now we had, initially I was like, well, he's back on the air. I don't quite get it. But what I wasn't thinking about is Nexstar and Sinclair. And so Sinclair has a television station, our ABC WSYX is a Sinclair station. And Sinclair has 178 TV stations in 81 markets, including 38 local ABC affiliates. They also own the tennis channel, just as a side note. Their ABC affiliates, are in Washington, D.C., and Portland and Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so they have not put Jimmy back on the air. And so, as Jackie says, we could actually press for sponsors. But one of the things that, we've talked about over the years is kind of the monopolization of televisions, because they, when we're talking about one television station, it's more like a mom and pop shop. But when you start to talk about, monopolies on media markets, and the Federal Communications Commission in 2018 told Sinclair that they could not actually buy Tribune Media because of the worries about monopolies. So it is clear that Sinclair and Nexstar, which just did a merger with Tenga, that they, would prefer, not to have a bad relationship with the Federal Communications Commission. David, you got your hand up. What would you like to add?
Okay, I just wanted to comment on the concentration of stations. They changed the rules. If you went back to the 60s or 70s, people could only be 5 television stations, and now 220 stations actually. And there's supposedly a limit of 38% of the households, but they found a loophole for that. UHF stations only count for 50%. That rule is totally obsolete in the digital age. So anyway, it's a big concern, this concentration of media. And the fairness doctrine was also dropped, which used to require stations to provide a chance for other alternate points of view. That's gone.
Yeah.
Well, and we're living in a really scary time period. Mindy, you just said that you testified in Congress about not giving Sinclair the right to buy more than one station in every market. Thank you, Mindy.
Catherine, do you want
yes.
to say like how many folks were there and the press coverage and that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
it was after the Supreme Court decision, and when the stations were all hovering to buy a lot of stations, the corporations were hovering to buy a lot of stations, and they asked me to testify. It was virtual, so I was by phone, so I didn't see a whole lot. But the commission was there. They were hearing me. Didn't make a difference, obviously, so it must not have been that good.
Well, and I was going to say, one, I'm sure you were effective. You're a good communicator. But the two, I'm going to throw into the chat a link with some articles. One of the things that was wonderful, this protest was organized by Indivisible Central Ohio. You'll notice Gary Daniels from ACLU Ohio there with the bullhorn. 125 people showed up 2:30 in the afternoon to protest WSYX and Sinclair, and Nick Six was one of the chants. I think, you know, it was a really powerful event, and I am, speaking of free speech, I'm completely moved by all of the beautiful signs. I just thought it was a really wonderful event. Now, I did want to also highlight this. Donald Trump, after seeing that Kimmel was coming back onto the air, said, "I think we're going to have to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds more lucrative." So this was Trump on Truth Social on the 23rd. And so they have continued to essentially threaten ABC, Disney, and sounds like extortion to me. You will remember that $15 million was given by ABC to the Trump library because George Stephanopoulos said that Trump was convicted of rape, where he was instead convicted of sexual assault. You know, parsing words, and that is how they got the 16 million, and 1 million was for legal fees for Trump.
Oh, yeah.
So
The
we're
fun
living in an interesting
continues.
world, and we need to spend our time, you know, doing what we can, you know, to encourage First Amendment rights. And Mindy, you have your hand up.
I do. Can you hear me?
We
Here,
can.
I am a big proponent of not only doing the protests, that's fine. That's not going to get us very far. What's going to really get us far is actually not buying goods and making sure that the advertisers know we're not buying goods from them because they're still advertising on a station that does illegal things.
Absolutely. I think there's lots of groups that are organizing lists of people are, you know, taking down lists of advertisers and calling them and letting them know for sure. Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Catherine, I'm going to move on to the next slide here. I think this is you. Oh no, maybe it's Kelly.
That's Kelly.
Yep. So we just want to continue to highlight that Common Cause is working with other national partners to just keep building momentum for the People's Promise, right? We have, I guess we'll say, a line in the sand where we think, you know, there should be an economy that works for everyone, a government for the people, equal rights and opportunities for all, right? Crazy, crazy notions. And so we have continually, you know, we have ways to tell Congress. I think I can put this link in here at the same time. You know, a way to let Congress know, hey, deliver on this promise. So you can send a letter to the editor. There's toolkits and information that's available there. You can join a phone bank. Common Cause has phone banks every Tuesdays and Thursdays to help out in with making some of these calls. And again, if you have stories of ways that you've been impacted, you know, we ask you to share those if you're comfortable in doing that. You know, we know that there is a government shutdown that's looming, right? We have less than a week. By October 1st, they're all our congressional leaders are supposed to come up with, at least at a bare minimum, a stopgap measure to keep the government's lights on. And so this is a little tricky because this funding bill has to be at least 60 votes to pass in the Senate. So there does need to be Democrat buy-in on at some level. And right now it just seems like it's just the longest game of stare down possible. But you know, we do encourage you to check out the People's Promise, you know, to pick your poison of, you know, why the government should be working for us, you know, addressing the cost of living concerns we've had lately, worker protections that are being stripped away, environmental protections that are being stripped away, a whole host of civil rights that are under question right now. And so we have a lot of work to do, and we know you're already doing it, you know, especially at the state level. And we ask you if you have the time and ability to, you know, to make this take this action at the congressional level. Thanks.
Very good. And then I just wanted to let you know about an event on Saturday. There was a bill that had a couple of hearings or companion bills, HB1 and SB 88, last year that, will probably come up again this fall. And it's, they're really insidious bills that are supposed to be for security, but they ban foreign governments or citizens of a list of foreign countries from owning property within a 25-mile radius of any critical infrastructure. And if you actually, and critical infrastructure is like farms, railroads, all kinds of things. So if you actually map that out on the map, it covers the entire state of Ohio. So it's basically saying if you happen to be a citizen of China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, Venezuela, you're not allowed to own property. And it is, once the bill passes, you would have a certain amount of time to sell that property if you happen to own it. And of course, this list could change at any time. So other countries could be added, countries could be removed. And, clearly, someone who is a legal permanent resident of the United States, has been living here for years, decades, has children who are citizens, who is a part of our community, who's contributing to our society. The idea that they would have to sell their family home, it is absurd. And deeply racist and troubling. So there's a rally against these bills this Saturday, and I'm going to be among a dozen people who are each saying a few short words, and just wanted to let you guys know about that. And just to also make sure that you know about these bills, and when they come up later in the fall, we'll let you know, and to help us pressure to have them either be withdrawn entirely or to make sure that they don't pass out of committee or pass. And moving on.
Oh, you know what? I did want to
yes.
mention, Mia. So
Yes.
if you were listening to this and thinking about coming to the State House on Saturday, the parking garage under the State House is in the midst of construction, and so it can be hard to park there. So you may find it easier to park on the street. So you have to use an app to do that, which is why I'm mentioning it, because it can get more complicated. There's a parking app that the city uses. The other thing to know is that there is a parking garage in the Commons, which would be, where the old mall used to be. You can easily park there, so you should be able to find a space there. The problem is that elevator is not working. So it can be challenging if you have any mobility issues. So I wanted to highlight that, and Wenda's sharing some suggestions as well. I just know that one of the things that we want to do is participate in these kinds of events, but parking should not be a challenge. I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And if you do, I personally highly recommend getting the parking app, because you can use it in you can use it not just in Columbus. Wherever you go, you'll find that it will be helpful. This is a fun thing that we're doing. It's actually next week already. My goodness, time flies. Tuesday the 30th at noon. Catherine and I and others will be at the State House and doing a State House tour with DJ Burns, who is known as the Rooster, and he's a kind of non-traditional, iconoclastic political blogger. If you don't know the Rooster, you have, something very strange and different and wonderful to look forward to. He really is knowledgeable about what goes on at the Ohio State House, and with the county commission and the city council and all the kind of political ins and outs of things in Columbus. He is a kind of anti-corruption writer, and goes after anybody who he feels is not doing right. Just like, for example, this week um, he found out that some of the Franklin County commissioners went on a quote trade trip, all expenses paid trade trip to Japan, and which wasn't disclosed to the public. So that's the kind of thing that he would investigate and talk about. He's extremely irreverent, but he's also very knowledgeable. And Catherine and I did a tour with him at the State House, and he knows all kinds of interesting, fun historical facts about the building and the characters who were in the building at different times in history and are currently there. And so we encourage you to sign up and register to join us for that tour. It'll be about an hour and a half. And that's next week. And then this is our first one, but we're hoping to do a monthly kind of visit to the State House of some kind and have like a common cause State House core who go either to a hearing or to just see what's happening on the floor of the House or in the Senate, and just kind of follow more closely what's going on at the State House. So this is where we're kicking that off with a tour. So hope to see you there if you are in the region next week.
And I was going to say he was much more mild-mannered than I expected.
Yes.
Let's just put it that way. So John, do you have your hand up? John Gray?
I'm gonna soldier on because we are kind of running out of time here a little bit. I just want to make sure everybody knows about the No Kings, like number 2, No Kings 2. There was No Kings on June 14th, and now we have a second No Kings here in October. It's a nationwide event. It's going to be promoted by Common Cause, Move On, Indivisible, ACLU. About 200 national groups are behind these protests. NoKings.org. Thank you, David. You can go there to find an event. You can go there to register an event. It's great to have as many events as possible. The more events we have, the more people driving by see them and see that there is opposition to what is happening in Washington with the Trump administration. It doesn't take a lot to put on an event. You could be 2 people standing with signs at the corner, in an intersection, a busy intersection in your town or wherever you are. So don't be intimidated by thinking you have to organize something fancy with speakers and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, it can really just be a few people out, taking a stand. Imagine there being, 200 events across Ohio. There's already quite a lot and more are coming. But this is going to be a big one. And I really encourage you to come out. Another way to support No Kings, you can register, and then if you don't actually want to go, or you don't you go to one event but maybe you have time and you could go to another, think about just driving by. Think about driving by and honking your horn, driving in a circle, because as you go by and you honk and you wave and you clap, you are actually boosting and encouraging the people who are there holding their signs. And that's really helpful. So that is one thing we're organizing in Central Ohio. So far we have 19 events that are all coordinating in Central Ohio, and we're going to be organizing car caravans to drive in between events. We're going to paint cars. We're going to have flags. We're going to have trumpets. We're going to, basically try to have ways for people to participate and to boost each other and to go to more than one event, so that we get as much out of this day as we possibly can. So yeah, that is coming up soon.
And don't forget, be sure to save the chat. Click the icon at the bottom of your screen if you don't have chat column up, and then click the 3 dots at the top of the chat window, and you can save the chat and have all this good information available to you.
Great, and we'll also send a follow-up with links and things. All right, Catherine, Kelly, someone.
Well, I was going to say this is the very last one, which is just a reminder of upcoming events. So on Saturday, that there's the rally against House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 88. I am looking forward to that State House tour. I think that's going to be fun. So if you're in the area, please consider joining us. We also, every 2 weeks have the Ohio Voter Rights Coalition, and I have to say this is one of those meetings I find really useful, an opportunity to hear from different people about what they're working on, and we're getting close to that November election. Early vote is just around the corner, so it should be a good meeting on October 3rd. We have the Fair Districts all volunteer huddle on the 8th of October. Mia just talked about No Kings. And then Coffee at Common Cause this time is going to be on October 23rd. So it'll always be on Thursday at 8:30 p.m. This time, October 23rd. And so we hope to see you at different events. And please, if you have suggestions for the next Coffee with Common Cause, send me a note. I really appreciate making sure that these things are hitting on issues that you're caring about and you're interested in, or that you have questions about. I'll throw my email into the chat.
Thank you so much, guys. We will send our follow-up. We appreciate you and everything that you are doing, and we will see you again very soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day.